decades.
Crime is always a very hideous thing, but something about unsolved stories finally coming to light hits differently. The stories that I am going to share with you today are going to shock you in a way that you would have never imagined. Minnesota, a seemingly perfect town for anyone to live in, but every place has its dark secrets. In August 2003, something peculiar happened. Some skeletal remains were discovered on the Highway 5 in Bradford Township. The way the skeletal remains were found was eerie, as the landowner was excavating that area and was shocked to find these remains. He alerted the authorities, who later sent them to the forensics. They soon gave the details of the skeleton to find out more about who it belonged to. The forensic revealed that it was the body of a white male who was not more than 28 years old. The Bureau of Criminal Apprehension Minnesota also revealed that the body had been buried there for decades, and nobody until now had discovered it. The forensic team gathered all the evidence and started creating that man's DNA profile. They also analyzed his teeth to try and match it with their database of records to identify him, but no record was ever found. The investigators named the man the Asante County John Doe and made several attempts to reconstruct his face. Everybody wanted to know who this mysterious John Doe was and who killed the man and buried him there years ago. Several years had passed and many people came forward to give their DNA samples to help out in the investigation. John's mystery, however, still seemed to be stuck in a dead end. In 2019, the forensic department reopened the case with advanced technology under their belt. It was when Chief Deputy Lisa Lovering initiated the process of advanced DNA technology that the case of John was opened again, and his DNA was submitted to the lab. Unfortunately, the DNA was too old to be recognized. Later that year, Lisa heard of a Texas-based laboratory that used great genome sequencing to build the profiles of skeletal remains. The laboratory name was Othram, and it was with their help when the forensics were able to develop a new viable DNA profile for John Doe. A new DNA profile was made, and this time was sent to a genetic genealogy consultant, Barbara Ray, for further investigations. In less than 24 hours, Barbara Ray, along with Deputy Chief Lisa Lovering, found a match of a distant relative. In no time, she had the information of two siblings of John and their phone numbers. Now the investigation officially started, and the siblings were contacted. It was revealed that their brother Donald Reindl of Ramsey County, Minnesota had been missing since 1970. The siblings told the investigators that the FBI had been looking for Donald, but did not have any luck. Later in 2022, the DNA of all the siblings were matched, and it was finally revealed that John Doe of Asante County was in fact the very same Donald who had been missing for the last 51 years. It was believed that someone had taken his life and he was buried at that site when he was 22. Investigators also believe that people who might be involved in his murder or know the whole story might be alive to this day, but nothing is confirmed. This was a very emotional moment for the family, as they were able to find closure about Donald's disappearance after 51 long years. Our next story is equally shocking. In 1994, a 39-year-old woman named Cheryl Huss lived in Desert Hot Springs, California. She had recently gotten divorced from her husband Jeff Huss, who lived in Cathedral City, California. After their divorce, Cherry moved to the Hot Springs to start a new life. They both had 3 children and they shared the custody of the 3. One of them was 14, the other 13, and the little one was only 8 years old. After 2 months of separation from her husband, Cheryl was excited to start fresh in her new apartment, but the unimaginable was about to happen. On April 23, 1994, Cheryl called her parents to tell them that someone had been taking photos of her and she had been receiving anonymous phone calls from someone. She sounded terrified and so her parents decided to check on her. On April 23, they left their house to go to Hot Springs, California. When they reached Cheryl's apartment, things did not feel normal. The porch light was on, her dog was out, and her car was parked on the street instead of the driveway. The parents went inside and found a horrendous scene. Cheryl's body was lying partially naked on the floor. She had been times. There was also a bite mark on her neck by her potential murderer. The parents called 911 and the investigations immediately started. The police took the saliva samples from the bite on Cheryl's neck and created a DNA profile of the murderer. They tried to match it with several other DNA profiles in their database, but found no match. Years had passed and Cheryl's parents tried their best to keep the case alive. They even offered a price of $50,000 for anyone who might identify the murderer. In 2022, with the help of the latest genetic technology, the DNA was identified, and to everyone's surprise, a match was found. The DNA belonged to a male who lived 12 miles away from Cheryl's home and was now 48 years old. Sharon Eugene Gadden was the person of interest. He was just 20 years old when he murdered Cheryl. On February 14, they received a saliva sample from Sharon, and on the 18th, it was confirmed that he was the murderer. On March 4, 2022, he was arrested, and it was found out that he had been arrested for trespassing, intoxication, and had gotten many DUIs in 1994, but was still roaming around free until his recent arrest. It was still unclear to why he murdered Cheryl or what the main motive behind his barbaric doing was. But after several years of being in the dark, Cheryl's finally got her justice. Our next and last story of the day is perfect to sum up our series of cold cases, since it will make you tremble. On June 5, 1986 in Eugene, Oregon, the police and the fire department were called to an apartment as they believed that a person had died. An apartment employee stated that he had not seen 62-year-old Gladys May Hensley for several days and was concerned about her. Unfortunately, the day when the police arrived, he had found Gladys murdered in her apartment. The investigation started, but there was no sign of forced entry into the apartment, nor were there any suspects. The police believed that Gladys was killed in the early hours of June 4. This case was still going on when on June 19, 1986, the body of a 33-year-old woman, Janice Dickinson, was found on the hillside behind a car dealership on Coburg Road. She was found naked and was lying upside down on her face. The police quickly linked Janice's murder to Gladys, as they had both been found in the same area and were also murdered in the same way. There were no further clues, unfortunately, and the case went cold until 2 years later in 1988, when a 73-year-old Geraldine Touhey was on the phone with her sister when her call suddenly dropped. Her sister believed that it was a small power cut or that somebody else had called her, so she did not worry that much. The next day, when she dropped by her house, she found a horrible scene. Geraldine was lying naked on the floor and was brutally murdered. The investigators knew that this case was also linked to Janice's and Gladys' murder, as it was done in a similar manner. The murderer had broken in through the front door and had cut the phone lines so that nobody would reach Geraldine. Unfortunately, due to no evidence, this case also grew cold. Many years later, the police took the help of the genetic genealogy department to identify the murderers of this case. This time it was successful and a suspect was found. It was a man named John Charles Balsinger. He was born on September 17, 1957, but unfortunately, the case once again hit a dead end as he had ended his life on March 23, 1988 in Springfield, Oregon. When John's history was looked into, it was revealed that he had been taken into custody for murder in 1980 in the city of Utah and was sentenced to only 5 years of imprisonment. After serving for only a short amount of time, he got out and was subsequently linked to the murder of those three women, Janice, Gladys, and Geraldine. The case was finally solved, but before the murderer could be caught, he was already dead. These cases are beyond awful and are also very unfortunate because it took years to finally find the culprits. Had it been a little earlier, the culprits could have been caught and brought to justice. For more such thrilling stories, stay tuned and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Do press that bell icon so that you will never miss out on our daily uploads. See you next time.